Good evening, and welcome to Armageddon Live, Series 2, Episode 35, Structure of Daniel 8 through 12, Part 7, on this 2nd of June 2020. I'm your host, Daniel Decrypted. Let me get my microphone a little closer. Oh, no. Alright. Can you hear me very well? I hope so. It's... Okay, there we go. Alright. So, again, I guess we're gonna... First, let me get out of the way here. We'll go back to where we were before, this nice little structure here. Let's go over a few pages. So, of course, we see the main structure, and when it comes down to it, oh yes, here's our nice focus, or the outer layer on this structure that we just went through. Yeah, so is the goat and ram of Daniel 8, is it really Christ and Satan? So we've been going through this. We showed that, of course, or we said that this picture that we get there of the ram and goat being overlaid on top of the glorious holy mountain is similar to the picture that you get in Revelation 14:1, the lamb on Mount Zion. It's also similar to the picture you get in Revelation 4, where you have the lamb slain in the judgment or in the courts of God. And then we of course saw that there's this connection between Mount Zion and the fall of Lucifer. And we all know that Lucifer fell out of heaven, so there's this similar imagery that's being used for Jerusalem and for heaven. So you get this idea that just like in Jerusalem, there's on the sides of the north there's a temple, and it contains the ark, which is the place where God said he would meet Moses to speak with him. And so it's essentially, the ark is essentially God's throne. So we have this similar thing because of the similar imagery. It must be this thing is also in heaven. That's what you see for a picture in Revelation 4, is that the heavenly sanctuary. Of course, Hebrews talks about this heavenly sanctuary and the fact that Christ acts as high priest in this heavenly sanctuary, this heavenly temple. Alright, so then we saw that there's this equivalence between king and kingdom, both in chapters 2 and chapter 7. And so just like Nebuchadnezzar was used as a symbol of the Neo-Babylonian Empire, so we can make this connection between Cyrus the Great and Medo-Persia and the ram. And because of the terms that are being used for Cyrus, the way he's described as God's shepherd, as his anointed, these are terms that are used for Christ, and so you get this idea then that the ram represents Jesus. But that's of course that's on another level. So there's all these different levels in prophecy, and you get to see all these varied pictures. That's what makes prophecy amazing, you know. You see that God has really poured out himself into this, that there is so much, because I mean, it's talking about Jesus, it's talking about the Lamb of God, and that's what we'd said before, is this fight between the ram and the goat. That's the great controversy. That's the fight that has been happening since the fall between Lucifer and Satan. I mean, between Christ and Satan, Christ and Lucifer. Alright, so now if we ask, what does Daniel 8 say about the ram and the he-goat. Does Daniel 8 give any more evidence? Or actually, we've been looking at a structure that covers Daniel 8 through 12. Does Daniel 8 through 12 tell us anything more about this ram and he-goat? Well, if we look in Daniel 8, the context of Daniel 8 is the sanctuary. So, and by him the place of his sanctuary was cast down. Verse 11. How long shall be the vision to give the sanctuary to be trodden underfoot? Verse 13. Then shall the sanctuary be cleansed. Verse 14. So we have this mention of the sanctuary. Of course, if we look at the ram and the he-goat, these are both sanctuary animals. They're clean, sacrificial animals. If his offering be of the flocks, of the sheep, or of the goats, Leviticus 1:10. So Leviticus tells us that sheep and goats are... I'm coming out of... There we go. Sheep and goats are two of the types of sacrifice you can have. You can bring to the sanctuary. Then what does it say? These are the beasts which ye shall eat, the sheep and the goat. Deuteronomy 14:4. So this is talking about the fact that sheep and goats are clean animals. And of course this is in contrast to the animals of Daniel 7. So we have the lion, the eagle, the leopard, the bear, and the nondescript beast. And that's assuming the nondescript beast is unclean, but all of these other animals are definitely unclean and not to be eaten. And they're not used in the sanctuary either. Alright, so what else do we know? So we've got the sanctuary is the context of Daniel 8. Then we have in Daniel 8 that the animals being used are sanctuary animals, clean sacrificial animals. Is there anything else that confirms that this is the sanctuary? That this is the context is the sanctuary? And of course that gives us information about these goats. Well, it's interesting that Daniel 8 talks about a dead ram and a live goat. Now generally when you bring animals, clean animals into the sanctuary, they end up dead. So the ram being dead isn't really surprising, but the surprising that the goat is alive. But this points to something. Yes, so as I said, it's a surprise, and this is an odd thing for the sanctuary to bring in a sacrificial animal and it's alive. But this actually does happen in the sanctuary on one particular day, the Day of Atonement, Leviticus 16. So we read, a ram for a burnt offering, verse 3. Alright, so that's obvious. Yes, ram goes in, he gets killed. The goat to be a scapegoat shall be presented alive and let go into the wilderness. Verse 10. Okay, so here's our strange occurrence. Our goat being alive still. And it happens on only one day in the sanctuary, and that is the Day of Atonement, Leviticus 16. So we asked if there was any other evidence what the goat and ram are. And well, I guess that we're talking about the sanctuary, and here we have some evidence. Alright. Do we have any more evidence? Well, we're looking at Daniel 8 through 12. So let's go on. Well, here's something else in Daniel 8. If we look at Daniel 8, it says, he said unto me, unto 2,300 days, then shall the sanctuary be cleansed. Verse 14. Okay, so Daniel 8 talks about the cleansing of the sanctuary. And this actually is the Day of Atonement. For we read about the Day of Atonement in Leviticus 16. He shall sprinkle blood upon it, and cleanse it from the uncleanliness of the children of Israel. Verse 19. This is actually talking about, I don't remember if it's the altar or... Anyway, it's an item. It's talking about the sanctuary anyway. Whether it's an item or I forget if it's a part of the sanctuary or the actual entire tabernacle. But anyway, so the Day of Atonement is about cleaning things that are dirty. And then we read in verse 30, on that day shall the priest make an atonement for you to cleanse you, that ye may be clean. So once again we have connection to Daniel 8, saying that yes, indeed we have imagery or pictures coming from the Day of Atonement. Alright, let's keep on going then, because our structure covered Daniel 8 through 12, so let's see what else we have. Daniel 10 and Leviticus 16. A certain man clothed in linen, whose loins were girded with fine gold of Uphaz. That's Daniel 10:5. And we read in Leviticus 16, he shall put on the holy linen coat, and he shall have the linen breeches upon his flesh, and shall be girded with a linen girdle, and with the linen mitre shall he be attired. Verse 4. So this is interesting. The high priest on the Day of Atonement, rather than having his normal, very detailed and complex clothing, he actually has a very simple dress. He's just basically all dressed in linen. And this is what the mysterious man of Daniel 10, we're told that he's just dressed in linen too. There's some quotes I can get where if you look at some of the older, what are they called? Commentaries. If you look at some of the older commentaries on this verse, they'll say that yes, indeed, this man is dressed up like a priest. And as I said, the high priest only wears linen on the Day of Atonement. Otherwise, he has other clothing, much fancier clothing. He has the ephod and he has the breastplate with all those jewels on it and everything. So here we have something else. Notice, of course, both of them are girded with a belt or whatever, but Daniel 10's belt is actually gold. Alright, let's go on. Daniel 12. The thing I should point out is the reason we only look at Daniel 10 and Daniel 12 is all the others. Daniel 11 is just purely interpretation. You're not actually seeing. Daniel's not actually seeing something. He's just talking to an angel. But these are the places where you have Daniel seeing something. So Daniel 12 says, Daniel 12 says, behold, there stood other two, the one on this side of the bank of the river, and the other on that side of the bank of the river. And the man clothed in linen was on the waters of the river. Verse 5. Verse 5 and 6. While we read in Leviticus 16, he shall take of the blood and sprinkle it upon the mercy seat and before the mercy seat. Verse 14. Exodus 25:22 adds to this and says, I will meet with thee and I will commune with thee from above the mercy seat, from between the two cherubims upon the ark of the testimony. So here we have this picture where you have, from Exodus, it's actually God that's in the middle. And then you have two angels or two cherubims on both sides of him. But this is the exact same picture that you're getting in Daniel 12. It's a little strange. You've got one being on one bank of the river, another being on the other bank of the river, and then you've got the man in linen. He's standing on the water in the center of the river. So once again, you get the same picture. A man standing between two others. And this says then that this man in linen is God. And of course it connects it. I mean, it's interesting to note that Jesus is both our judge and our lawyer. So he actually has two places in the judgment. Which means, of course, if he's our judge and our lawyer, we can't lose. Anyway, so if you, I mean, every time you had someone who was some animal that was sacrificed in the sanctuary, I was always looking forward to Christ's sacrifice on the cross. So from this, we already have another indicator that the ram is indeed Christ. I mean, it makes it very explicit in Daniel 8 because the ram is actually attacked by the goat and killed by the goat. I mean, that connection between the ram and the goat is not made plain in the Day of Atonement, but it is in Daniel. Anyway, I guess that's all I'm going to say today. It connects, and of course, if you know what the Day of Atonement is, it's a day of judgment. So this once again connects to that whole imagery of the ram and the goat fighting it out in the temple. I mean, it connects to Daniel 7 and the picture of the judgment that's given there. And anyway, I hope you gain some insight from this little comparison of Leviticus 16 and Daniel 8. I hope it piqued your interest to come back again. Now I guess I have a little more work to do tomorrow morning to try and get prepared for tomorrow's presentation, because I don't actually have anything done right now. Anyway, I probably have to try and structure this stuff a bit better, but I hope it's helping you to see the importance that God places on the judgment and on the fact that he wants us all to know that it's Christ and Satan that are the center of the judgment. Right? It's a judgment that's being made on Satan, and when it comes to God's people, if they're truly God's people, all that focus is being placed on Jesus, not on us. That's why we can be saved, even though we have sinned, and the wages of sin is death. It's because our life is not being looked at. What's being looked at, of course, is, what you want Christ to say is, yes, this is my friend. This is my close friend. This is my disciple. He's not going to go and look at your life and say, oh, he failed here and here and here and here and here. No, it's whether you have that relationship. If you have that relationship with Christ, that's why we need to spend time with Christ each and every day. We need to be in contact with him throughout the day, because that's the only way you build a relationship with him. Once you have that relationship, and as I said, it's a daily thing. You gotta keep at it. Once you have that relationship, Christ, God will change you. It's the work of a lifetime. He will change you. And when it comes to the judgment, it's just, do you have that relationship? If you have that relationship, then Christ stands in your place, and you don't lose. There's no way you can lose. So I'd encourage you to spend more time with Christ. Just daily walk with him. And I look forward to seeing you in heaven. God bless, and good night.